Hey, I'm Fede Álvarez, director of The Girl in the Spider's Web, and this is Notes on a Scene. Sony approached me 2 years ago to see if I want to adapt the 4th book in the Millennium series, The Girl in the Spider's Web. And me as a big fan of the series, I thought it was a great entry point for a new audience. After she's done a job, Lisbeth Salander, thinking everything is okay, she walks out of the bathroom and she's going to find a surprise. There's some people in her house. This is a set, this is a build. All that window there is actually exactly a replica of what you would see if we were actually inside the apartment where then we did the exteriors on. The whole idea of the interior, like you get a sense here, was based on this concept we developed with Pedro Luque, with my DP, on this kind of hot and cold combination. So it's always the outside, it's very bluish, it's very cold, it's ice, it's snow. And inside you always find this like sections here, like there's always like very warm colors. So he has the laptop on his hand. He has that basketball mask. The purpose of that mask is to fool like face recognition softwares, because he has little patterns on the mask. The face recognition software will crash when they look at those faces, which I find pretty interesting. It needs to have some sort of explanation, some why behind it. It cannot just be to make it look cool. This is a big part of the story. She gets shot on her tattoo. The bullet just grazes her. As she gets darker in the story, as she gets into a deeper place, the tattoo bleeds and bleeds more. So this is the moment that she gets shot on the tattoo. I mean, I tell you, 90% of the movies these days will do this CG. What we did, and it's so fast, you can barely see it. If you look at the wall in the back, behind, like right here, that's a bullet that has hit the wall. And then there's one hitting her back there, bang. You see that, like that's a squib. Also, it's going to impact the wall there. All this is all practical. We did this like 6 times just to get a more crude and dramatic effect when she gets shot in the movie, instead of being a CG, a CG blood squib. Movies these days do a lot of fake muzzle flashes. That's a real muzzle flash, real guns. Most of the movies, when you do this and you do a gunshot, there will be none of this here, because there's actually no gunshot. It's all done in VFX these days. So you don't get the beauty of this sort of things. It's slower also, because there's levels of safety that you need to have on set. But also like stuff like that, like having a real muzzle flash in a scene makes for better performances. This sort of old school approach always, I think for me, makes for way better action moments. Lisbeth Salander is one of the best characters really in literature in the last 20 years, and there's certain kind of great characters that you just know them too well and you know exactly what they're going to do at the time. With Lisbeth, she has a little bit of bad on her and a little bit of good, and that makes for great stories, because you never know if she deserves to live or die at the end, or to get what she's really looking for. Directors are thinking about a million things while they make a movie. The actors just focus on one thing, which is their role. You need an actor that has the ability of really emote. And Claire Foy really, I believe, is one of the best actors working today. And she can play a scene, play it very bravely and acting like very strong, but you can see exactly in her eyes how scared she is. When you have actors of this caliber, you just have to point the camera in the right direction, and you'll have something great. It's very easy to make the mistake of like loading an actor with characterizations that they don't feel comfortable or they don't understand yet, but they do it because that's what you're supposed to do. For me, it was very important that Claire, everything she had on her was something that she felt like was right and was in line or in tune with what she imagined the character is and what the inner life of the character is. We had one of the best tattoo artists in Berlin working with us. I mean, the part of the tattoo is a big part of the characterization for the character of Lisbeth. And that's something I always believe the actor has to be deeply involved. So she has this thing here. She has like little 3 dots there on the neck. Claire even has stuff written on her body that you have to really, in the movie, kind of stop to see it. And so some of the stuff, I don't even want to know what it is. Some of that stuff is kind of written on places of her body that you'll never see in the movie. That means a lot for her as an actor playing this role. The most interesting aspect of this one for me was that the fact that it was moving on her shoulder blade. In some of the scenes when she does have her shirt on and you can see her back, you can see how it moved and felt very alive. And that beautiful bowl haircut, I remember as we were shooting, as the movie progressed, that haircut was popping up everywhere in Berlin, which we thought that showed us we were on the right track. Every time you're about to have an explosion, I think the best design possible is to create an emptiness. The music is rising, the sound is rising, getting louder and louder. And then the loudest boom you'll ever hear in the theater. Again, in the whole spirit of we don't do anything CG, if we can do it for real, we're going to do a massive explosion. So once we were really done with this set and we shot everything we need to shot, we said, okay, now we can blow it up. I think like we have like 4 different cameras because you don't get to do this twice, never, because everything gets destroyed. You can see, if you look at the glass here how the shock wave destroys it when it reaches it there, boom, that's just out of the explosion. It's so loud and the shockwave is so strong that it's destroyed the whole glass. In a lot of movies, when you get to see something like this, camera never moves because the camera is in a rig. It cannot be in a techno crane because the explosion will damage the crane. So usually you cannot have anything too technological on a set that is going to explode. We had the camera in a dolly, and we had a rope. The grips are like pulling from the dolly. So what we get is like something that is rare, which is actually see the camera traveling as the explosion happens. There's one camera hidden down there behind this wall. This one we actually are looking at will be number 2, which is this whole camera we're seeing now. We see Alexa 65, then the rest are like standard Alexas. But they're inside a crash box, so they're inside of, with an expensive camera in particular, you don't want to damage the camera or the lens. The lens usually is the most expensive part of the camera. You want to make sure it's inside a box that when an explosion like this will happen, you don't want the camera to get damaged. There's another camera right on this table, which is a little GoPro. There's a GoPro there. There's another one, there's like 2 more here. Actually, there's like 4 and 5 here, which one is this Alexa, and then another one is actually a crash cam that we call them, right? Small cameras that you don't mind if they get destroyed. We crashed one Alexa Mini on a drone, one of the car chases. I think we damaged one on a car crash as well. You really try not to. This is stunt double, right? Like you could never put the actor in a situation like this because it's really life or death situation. And I'll show you how close it is. She has to run, make a jump and land inside the water, and there's a countdown, but the explosion is going to come, and if she doesn't make it behind this wall here before that explodes, she will be really badly hurt. And you can see how perfect timing is. She jumps out right when the explosion is detonating behind her. But not only that, there's actually things that you never can really plan for. There's always objects and things that fly, and there's this like basket, a plastic basket that flies overhead. Do you see it there? You see the thing here? Smashes the wall and makes a dent inside the wall. If that would have hit her in the head, it would have been really bad. If you think about all the elements you have to synchronize in this scene, you have a guy with a finger in the trigger that has to pull the trigger to make the explosion. You have the stunt double that should jump at the same time. Every time you add an element, you add a level of complexity to the shot. Sometimes you try to reduce them at the most. You try to add the stunt later, do first the explosion. The way I like to do them is really take my chances and do all of those elements at the same time. So all it takes is one of those people that to just go a little bit later, and then you have to destroy the set and the shot is not good. After you're doing it like 5-6 times and everything works and the timing of the camera movement is right, that's when you go for the explosion, right? All that yellow dust that you see, most of all that cloud is not smoke or fires, it's pollen, and the flower pollen actually ignites and it creates those beautiful explosions you see in Hollywood movies. I think you can see probably all this section here. Also, it's like all padded, it's all soft. And actually, probably this section here is soft. So when she hurt her back there, it doesn't hurt. But there's no way to do this without pain, I tell you. I mean, you can see here how she's gonna hit her ankle against that hurts like hell. And for any of us, it will break our ankle. But the stunt persons are hard to crack. Explosions is something that Hollywood has done a million times. And the whole thing for anybody, I think, is, okay, how do you do it in a special way? How do you do it in a way that hasn't been seen a million times? For me, usually it's like to go to an unpredictable place. And while you're in the middle of the explosion here in the sequence, instead of staying inside, you go outside and go small. For the main character, it might be their whole life is falling apart. Their apartment is blowing up. But for the city, It's just an explosion, a small building down there. Instead of going big, going counterintuitive, and going small is something I love to do. But there's a lot of visual effects here. I mean, this is one part. All this is CGI. We do have real lights on the explosion. We have like massive light rig around the apartment, but the explosion is shot separately. We don't do the fire on the day. We do then on a soundstage the same explosion, same size, but we do it in a controlled environment, I guess a black version of the building, and then we compose it into the shot. So it's actually a real fire, it's a real explosion, but it's done on a different day on a different set. Because we actually do real lights, you do get this part, which is the reflection of the actual explosion on the eyes. So it's all this combination of like invisible VFX with actual practical effects that you do in the day. That for me is always the best way to do it. So you see the explosion. If you go frame by frame here, you'll see, you barely notice, but all these lights flicker as the sound wave hits them and eventually triggers all the alarms until it get into these cars here. We did have these cars are real. These cars are CG. We didn't have enough cars. This is kind of great combinations of craft when you get the picture and the sound to portray the explosion in a different way, slightly different way. Back inside the house, this is actually a crash cam, one of those. You see, this is actually in the middle of the explosion. So, and then this is one of the shots that you kind of dream about when you're riding it, Lisbeth under the bathtub, just hoping for the fire to dissipate in time before she drowns, basically. The way we did this is like a completely different set. We had a bathtub that had a glass at the bottom, and we had this massive roof with this massive setup, which is basically like an actual massive roof that will catch the fire, and the fire will dance inside. So, and the bathtub is underneath with the glass with Claire on this other massive platform. So the camera can be underneath, and there's actually two cameras, one for close-ups and one that catches the whole bathtub. So this very complex setup just to get a beautiful shot in the movie that really dramatizes her situation. And it's real, and I think you cannot do that in the United States legally, I think, because we shot this in Berlin, they allowed us to have such a massive fire indoors. Because again, most movies these days will do CG fire for safety, and we don't do that. So all this is like the real fire that was on top of her. You want to really hope that Claire won't pop her head out of the water too soon, because just the heat will just burn her skin. It's not that I have anything against VFX. I mean, good VFX, you should never see them, right? So they should always be invisible, particularly for a story like this, which doesn't have a VFX creature or a CG creature or a monster. And when it's supposed to be the real world, I think the audience should never notice something in CG. I mean, sometimes you do and you don't mind because you accept it, but you accept it today. 10 years from now, you won't. So I always try to avoid anything that is like it's super new and untested. I tend to go with techniques that at least are like 5 or 10 years old. For me as a director, you make these movies to go into that adventure. You read, when you write the scripts and you spend all the time imagining that place. So what I do, like we did in this movie, we do find that place for real, and we go to that place and you hook yourself with a wire, and hopefully you won't fall to your death. But you really try to go through that experience yourself, because if you do, then you'll put the audience in the theater through that same experience. Not because it cannot be done in other ways. A lot of things you could have done via VFX in a cheaper, quicker way. But for the actors and for the people involved in the movie, when you're doing things for real, the whole ride and the involvement of everybody in the movie, it's priceless. It's basically what you give them. You give them back to really put them through the real elements.